You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Listening to the Bells of Liberty podcast, where freedom rings and the sassiness stings. Stay tuned for a little bit of sassy freedom. Hello, good evening. You're listening to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Previously on As the World Burns, we talked about Charlottesville and the subsequent riots over events and people that are long since past. And in our latest installment, we've discovered the stupid is still going strong when the SJW crowd continues to destroy our history with the maturity level of 2-year-olds, while also making demands of their fellow white citizens, makes stupid comparisons of failing socialist countries and America, and all around suck the joy out of literally anything because it offends them. Our latest Constitutorial tonight is on the Third Amendment, right? It's on the Third Amendment? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. I was like, I didn't actually check that. I'm just making crap up now. And we're bringing that old razzle-dazzle back with those brand new Ring the Bells. So, Rocky, even though I feel like I'm being unfairly treated tonight, as I'm like the only really white person on this show, what demands do you have from Black Lives Matter for us?
You better check that tone, Missy, because that white privilege is showing. So I always love stories of how social justice warriors like to point out things that they feel are wrong in this country. And I also love the incredibly nonsensical ways they suggest that these issues be resolved. So of course, Black Lives Matter made the news earlier this week when an organizer of the Charlottesville, Virginia chapter of BLM, her name is Chanel Helm, in the aftermath of the event, from 2 Saturdays ago, she wrote a wish list of sorts. It almost reads like a Christmas list of what she feels white people must do on behalf of Black people. Now, there are 10 demands total, and I'm going to post a link to the original article from Leo Weekly, which I was extremely disappointed because I thought it would be a horoscope publication, but it is not. Like I said, I will not go over all 10 because it'll take us all night to go over each one, but here are the ones that I found the most interesting. So, demand number 1 reads, white people. If you don't have any descendants, will your property to a Black or brown family, preferably one that lives in generational poverty. Well, I'm sorry that you live in generational poverty, but why are you living in poverty? There's plenty of opportunities out there for everyone, despite what you might think. Why don't you use the educational system that's really not free? I mean, it's free for everybody to use, but technically it's not free because taxpayers do pay into the system. Use that educational system and educate yourself. Get your high school diploma. Try and go into college. If you can't afford going into college, try a technical or trade school and learn how to be a mechanic or a plumber. You can even be a dental assistant or a pharmaceutical assistant. You can improve your life. You just have to have the drive and the desire for it. White people have nothing to do with that. You are the master of your own destiny. Take what's around you and use it to your advantage. No one should be giving you anything. You can do this on your own. Demand number 2 reads, white people, if you're inheriting property you intend to sell upon acceptance, give it to a Black or brown family. You're bound to make that money in some other white privileged way. That's for you, Jaina.
Mm-hmm.
So, regarding this demand, how about I will decide who to give my property to should I pass away. I don't care if it's a familial relation or a friend or someone that I know from church. If, for example, I have a friend who's in dire need of a home, I'm looking at you, Sammy, and it's a single mom. And it's a single mom of little means, and I personally have no surviving children or surviving family members, I would gladly give that property to them. But what really bothers me about the demand is the insinuation that the property was obtained in some sort of questionable fashion or through white privilege. Let's make something really clear here. If working 16-hour days and saving every penny I make and taking care of my credit in order to buy a home is considered white privilege, then every homeowner in the country or that's ever lived anywhere is white. And that includes Hispanics and, yes, other Black people. Look around your neighborhood, and I'm pretty sure you're going to find Black people who own homes. So
what?
Yeah.
What? I thought they all lived on street corners and stuff because white people just forced them out of their homes and stuff.
No, these are Black people who decided to assume responsibility of their lives, decided to make something of themselves, and now they can afford a home. Heck, it may not even be the first home that they've ever owned in their lives.
Whoa, you are like pushing the white supremacist agenda.
Yes, I know. It's really mind-blowing. So another demand number 5 reads, white people, if any of the people you intend to leave your property to are racist a-holes, her words, not mine, change the will and will your property to a Black or brown family, preferably a family from generational poverty. Again, if I inherit something and I'm a very normal person, I assure you I'm not going to leave my inheritance to a racist jerk. Mostly because I don't associate with those people at all. Also, regardless of what my inheritance is, I choose who to give it to. You have no power over the choices I make. And this is the libertarian in me saying, this is my stuff, don't touch it. If you want it, you go get some of your own. If I choose to give this to you, then I will. But don't tell me what to do.
That's like me and my coconut cream Oreos. Like sitting on the couch, and like people are like eyeballing them. I'm like, go get your own.
I feel like that about pretty much any food.
Yes.
Don't even remotely assume that I'm going to share this with you. Like, there's no room for that. You need to buy your own and, like, go sit somewhere else. Stay away from mine.
So number 6 is white people. Now, I did notice that almost all of these demands start with white people. I'm like, stop that. Address people differently. Not everybody reading this is a white person. Anyway, demand number 6, white people, rebudget your monthly. This is the way it was written. Rebudget your monthly so you can donate to Black funds for land purchasing. Again, don't tell me how to allocate my charitable donations. If I want to give money to a nonprofit that helps inner city youths, that's my choice. If I don't want to donate to any charity, that's my prerogative as well. But then again, I'm not a cold, heartless person, so I probably will donate to something. But don't tell me who to give my money to. I'll give my money to who I think
also
should get it.
Assuming that people have funds left over from their monthly budget, whatever that means, monthly.
From their monthly. I'm like, monthly what?
Are we talking like tampon tax or like what? I don't know. But I know what I have to pay in bills, and I can guarantee you, if I have to choose between buying groceries for my family and reallocating and donating my funds to people I don't know, that's not really a difficult decision for me. I'm sorry.
No, it all depends on what your discretionary income is at the end of the month. If you don't have any to give to charity, that's fine. If you do have something to give to charity, again, no one has the right to tell you how you're going to spend your money. So don't tell me, don't try to guilt me into giving money to something I don't want to give money to. So, but anyway, going to round these demands up as best possible, there are 3 demands that go hand in hand. So I'm going to read them in sequence, and then I'm going to give you what I think about it. Number 7, white people, especially white women, because this is y'all's specialty. Nosy Jenny and meddling Kathy, get a racist fired. Y'all know what the F they be saying. You are complicit when you ignore them. Get your boss fired because they are racist too. Backing up number 7, this should be easy, but all those sheetless Klan, Nazis, and other little white men will all be returning to work. Get their ass fired. Call the police even. They look suspicious. And number 9 goes back to number 8 and says, if any white person at your work or as you enter in spaces and you overhear a white person praising the actions from yesterday, meaning the Saturday where the events of Charlottesville took place, first get a pic. Get their name and more info. Hell, find out where they work. Get them fired. But certainly address them, and if you need to, you got hands, use them. Now, I think these are probably the worst on the list because the author makes it extremely clear that she hates people who do not think like her. Number 7 asks white women, her words, to get racists fired if they overhear other females making racist comments. Number 8 asks people to point out to those who may look like they took part in the Charlottesville rally. Remember what we talked about last week? This is what we meant. One can't just throw accusations at someone just because they look like the true racists that partook the rally. And number 9 is probably the most telling of what these people are about. She says that if you hear someone praising the events in Charlottesville in favor of the racists, take their picture and do everything in their power to find out who they are and destroy them. Worst of all, to quote her, she says, if you need to, you got hands, use them. I'm sorry, I can't give any of these demands any legitimacy when the means that you want to reach your ultimate goal is through violence. That just delegitimizes what Black Lives Matter claims that they are for. Therefore, protesting, police brutality or protesting something going on in the African American community. Listen, that's fine. But violence never reaches anything. And if we follow these BLM rallies, they always end up in criminal acts. Windows get broken. Businesses get destroyed. There's fires. There's attacks on police. There's attacks on citizens. So, I'm sorry, I can't take you seriously when your actions speak louder than your words.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. And I think it's pretty clear that most of what we've been seeing in the last week or two is not about trying to make things better. This is just an excuse to loot, to harm people, to, give excuse to people to go hurt and take from others. That's all it is. If you were peacefully protesting like these supposed Antifa people were, then you would not be showing up to these protests with boards with nails in them so that you can hit police horses with them and knock police to the ground and beat them senseless. And these Black Lives Matters movements, these riots, consistently lead to even Black communities being looted and destroyed because that's just what they think is their right to do. It isn't about actually bringing what they like to call awareness. It isn't actually about trying to heal wounds that they think exist. It's not about ending racism. It's about, now it's a get back. This is revenge tactics. This is our right to break into your store and take your crap and to ruin your life because we're owed something. Even if it is
because we feel wronged.
Yeah, even if it is to another Black family or another Black community or another, someone who's supposedly just like you, but apparently isn't because they're not on the street with you, beating in people's doors and busting windows open to steal, $100 Nike shoes.
Exactly.
So I was thinking about demand number 7 and how she talks about white women like Kathy and Susan and says, you're nosy. How's that not racist? Like, are only white people nosy?
Well, depending on who you ask, my friend, depending on who you ask. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't consider myself I don't consider myself white privileged at all. I'm just someone who works really hard in order to get the things that I want and that I need to provide my family with so that we can be happy, happy and healthy, and we can all go to work and go to school.
You're not allowed to think that you work hard, though. That's what's so infuriating is with people like this is even if you can prove that you work hard. Like me, up until a couple years ago, I was working 4 jobs to keep a roof over my head. I just had to get a second job recently to make my ends meet because I had a lot of stuff happen to me in the last couple of months that has put some financial strain on me. And if I want to continue living like I was living, I have to work for it. So
Exactly.
it's, but you can't say that because it's like, well, you're white, so you got the jobs because you're white, and you're keeping the money that you have because you're white, and everything that happens to you in your life is because you're white. I'm like, yeah, getting rear-ended by it was just funny. I was actually rear-ended by a little Hispanic lady. So I don't know how ironic that was. In the last couple of months when I got in a car accident, I was hit by a little Hispanic lady. So what white privilege do I have there? So
Exactly.
but there's no way to defend that you are a hard worker, that you did not just have things handed to you, that you did not have things necessarily easier. Have I lived a hard life? No, I have not. I will admit that. But I'm also not claiming that I did.
That's just not the way that it works. But anyway, we've gone a little long on this segment, so we'll be back with Bells of Liberty on the Lanterns Radio Network. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. So, Jaina, how ignorant are millennials about Venezuela?
Apparently very ignorant, because they prove it daily when they make stupid commentary, like the Daily Wire has reported on in the last week, saying that woke millennials say they'd prefer Venezuela's food lines over America's income inequality. Because when asked if they felt that socialism in Venezuela was a problem, one of the woke millennials stated, even though there's some downside, there's some violence there and some food lines, but still everyone has to do the same thing and they wait in line equally. So you're saying that people shanking other people for toilet paper, eating zoo animals because there is literally no food for them to buy in their grocery stores, that's a downside? I'd say it's a little bit more than a downside, genius. It's the effects of socialism. And again, because all of our woke millennials are under the impression that socialism works, it just doesn't work when it's done wrong. So that's why we got to try it here, because we'll get it right. We'll finally get it right, even though it's failed every single time it's been applied to any government anywhere. There's a downside. But guys, they all stand in line equally. They're all equally starving. So isn't that awesome? So equally, we're all going to die at the same time. That's nice. Go team.
Isn't that the end game for them?
It's just infuriating that anybody could suggest that whatever income inequality that we see in this country is worse than having to stand in line for basic necessities. I really appreciate being able to get into my car that I've purchased for myself, that I'm paying for with my money, that I work for. I like being able to get into the car that I've paid for, drive 5 minutes to my grocery store, and within 10 minutes find whatever it is that I would like to eat for dinner. And I don't have to murder anybody to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the Hunger Games. I do not have to fight people to get my toilet paper. I don't have to fight people to buy dog food for my dogs. In fact, I don't have to eat my dogs in order not to die.
Exactly.
But socialism, it's just, it'll work. We just got to do it right, guys.
Yes, it's American socialism. We can do it better because America.
Well, I reading these things and then starting to talk about it actually just, it just makes me mad. Obviously, I don't know what gave it away. Maybe the tone of my voice going up significantly as I do. But it's just, I don't know how stupid you have to be to even suggest that. To even suggest that people who are starving, people who have nothing, have it better than we do because they all equally have nothing. Is that really what you want? I don't understand people who love socialism, because I have friends. I have friends who are huge socialists, huge progressives, huge everything. They like to pull the, well, Star Trek is obviously socialism because everybody gets free health care and they get to do what they want with their lives and they don't have to worry about having shelter and money. Yes, in an idealized, fictional world. Yes. We all have health care and we all have a roof over our heads and we all get to go into space and find the next generation. But no, that is not how it works now. And how did we get to that point is what I'd like to ask. I'm like, there's still a point A and there's still a point B. There's got to be something in between. And if it doesn't work from point A to point B, it's not something that's worth continuing to do. So please stop using that analogy. I love Star Trek as much as the next person, but my eyeballs still roll out of my head when they start pulling out the political, oh, look, we have it so much better. Someone still has to clean the ship, right? Someone still has to be the janitor. Someone still has to do the jobs no one wants to do, right?
I think it's just that, schools, there are some schools that are great at doing their jobs, and teachers who are great at doing their job, and they're educating people. But I think that the moment that these millennials head to college and they converge into these spaces, they are taught, they're basically indoctrinated that, socialism, because it works on a TV show, it works in real life. I think that these kids would probably benefit from hearing from someone who actually lived in a communist country. Really tell us how it is that it goes on, that it's not puppies and rainbows and everybody gets to stand in line and wait forever for a one piece of one ply toilet paper, like that line from Seinfeld, you have a spare to square or square to spare. That's how it is in Venezuela. And I think that they were doing it at some point. I don't know if they're still doing that because the food supply just keeps getting smaller and smaller. But weren't families getting at one point basically like a bag with like 10 items, and they had to have that food last them for about a month until the next shipment of food was being delivered. So basically everything was being rationed, and you would get like a random bag of a couple of items for your household. So you get like a roll of bread and a roll of toilet paper and a little bit of bath soap, and things like that. It's like, do you really consider that living? When you have Amazon and you can order your things ahead of time, and if you live in one of those lucky areas where you can get something delivered to your doorstep in 15 minutes or 2 hours, do you really think that you would survive with a 1 month rationed supply of something that you may or may not necessarily need? Think about it.
Well, I mean, these are the people who don't flush the toilet to save water, to save the planet. You know what I mean? Like, they're the ones, if it's yellow, let it get mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. That's them. So this doesn't really surprise me. And I still think anyone who thinks socialized medicine is a good idea should join the military and see how it really works. Because TRICARE is awful.
Well, and that's the thing, though, is like we keep saying, well, if they actually talked to someone who lived through this, they wouldn't feel this way. The fact of the matter is they are so ignorant and so positive that they understand how this works. They could talk to someone who's been through this. In fact, there's been plenty of people that go around and talk about how I lived under communism. I lived in a socialist country. I have survived all of this. My family came here to America specifically to escape that because it was so terrible. And this country is amazing. And they would still say to their face that they don't know what they're talking about. That it just didn't work in their country. So, whatever.
Yeah.
And you know what? If it's so fabulous to wait in line equally, go pack your Louis Vuitton bags and your little iPhone that won't work in socialist Venezuela and get your ass there. I don't understand. I just don't understand why that's something that has to happen here. Why do we have to change our country to be like all the other countries that do it and have proven time and time again that it doesn't work?
It might be hard for them to go to Venezuela since Trump just imposed sanctions on Venezuela. And people are saying it's a lot like Cuba's embargo. So I don't know. And, honestly, reading some of the sanctions, it sounds like things are going to get worse before they get better for Venezuelans. But they're trying to do it to get Maduro's little posse of people out of power.
Good.
So we'll see how it works, but I feel like the people are going to suffer from it before any of people at the top are going to.
Well, and that's the way it is every time, though. That's the thing. The people who scream for this the loudest don't seem to understand that the more power you give people, the less they're going to share with you. And that's why we need to be careful with that happening here. We're already seeing it happen here with our politicians that spend decades in office and don't leave and then make policies that just hurt us, normal people, who work 3 and 4 jobs to make ends meet, who actually have families to care for and don't have 3 houses. Bernie freaking Sanders, I'm looking at you. Who don't have fancy cars, who can't afford the luxuries in life, and do sometimes have to decide, do I buy groceries this month or do I have to pay this bill that is due? And I don't know why why they're so morally opposed to the idea of making it possible for everybody to keep more of their check. Why is that so horrible to be against taxes? Why? Why would you not want people to keep more of what they work for? If you're going to work and you are working 40, 60, 80 hours a week, why would you want to give up 75% or more of those hard hours to some government entity that gets to decide where it goes and you have no say? Or how about you get to keep almost 100% of your check and you pay for the 2 things that government's actually responsible for, and that's it. And then you can afford the car, you can afford the college education, you can afford the house, you can afford the health care. You don't have to worry about that because more of your money is in your pocket. I don't understand why that's a concept that is so foreign to people who are into socialism. Even just trying to explain it to people is like, well, that sounds a little hypocritical. Hypocritical that I want to keep the money that I work for, that I get screamed at by angry parents, and I have kids kick and bite me sometimes because they're having a tough day, and I go through that. You think it's wrong that I want to keep the money I earn from having to go through that? Get out. Move to Venezuela. Get your passport ready and just move on. We don't need you here.
So I've asked my socialist friends why they're willing to give a huge chunk of their dollars to the government, yet they feel like they can't give that same amount of dollars to a private entity of their choosing to provide them services that they're looking for.
Because that's capitalistic and pig-like, or so I've heard.
And they don't do that.
No.
And that's just not going to happen.
Because we can't support capitalism in name, but we can buy our iPhones and then tweet angrily from our iPhones about how horrible this country is and how disgusting capitalism is and how hypocritical it is that people would like to keep more of the money they earn. That it was never ours. It's just being lent to us. So we should be happy and lovingly, willingly give it back to everyone else who needs it more than we do.
No, but I do know that Bernie Sanders has a couple of houses and $100,000+ car.
Right.
So socialism works great for him.
Right. So if anybody should be able to just hand some stuff over.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to have to leave it there, but don't worry, when we come back, it's time for our Constitutorial. This is the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome back to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. It's time for our Constitutorial, where Sammy is going to be discussing the Third Amendment of the Bill of Rights. Sammy.
Okay, so this week we're talking about the Third Amendment, which isn't really an amendment a lot of people think about, although there's this one girl on Twitter that I follow, and her profile literally says, I'm a strong Third Amendment person. The Third Amendment has to do with quartering soldiers in private houses. So this was an issue that was really important to the framers because of the intolerable acts as a response from the Boston Tea Party. The British enacted a series of laws that were punitive in nature. So the Quartering Act of 1774 basically allowed soldiers to live in America at the expense of the colonists and even allowed them to take up residence in private homes if there was insufficient space in the barracks. I remember watching the Schoolhouse Rock video and seeing how the soldiers would just like barge into people's homes and steal their food, which, you know, you think in today's world that's not something that happens. But this was actually one of the complaints that led up to and was mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. So it makes sense that this was supposed to be a crystal clear issue, that this would never happen in America again. It is one of the least cited sections of the Constitution in the Supreme Court. And people say that is because so little conflicts have taken place on American soil that there's never been really need for it in a legal battle. And to date, the Supreme Court has never used this as a primary source for any case ever, which I thought was a little interesting tidbit. But there have been a few cases where people have tried to use it to establish the right to privacy. And some say that this is a limiting factor in wartime, that the executive branch doesn't have a free reign over the entire country. And the only real place that this has been an issue, or people have like war gamed it out where this could be a potential issue, is if there were like a natural disaster like Hurricane Katrina, where the National Guard was activated and there were enough troops but not enough space. Where would they be housed? Like, where can you put them? They're saying, you know, would they just try and put them in someone's house? But for me, I'm like, the wording of the Third Amendment says specifically that it cannot be used, like the house cannot be used without the consent of the owner. And you would hope that during a time of natural disaster that people would be willing to house the people that are helping them. So I don't know if that's unreasonable. What do you guys think?
Well, much like you said, you know, this isn't... I can't even remember when was the last big conflict inside the United States for it to be applied to modern times. So I can actually see where it was crafted at the time because of things that were going on, and luckily, you know, a couple of things were covered after it was passed. But since then, we really haven't seen any kind of conflict that we should be concerned with about quartering soldiers in your home. But, you know, if the situation ever presented itself, you know, there is something in place that will prevent these soldiers from just coming into your house and doing whatever they want. And by whatever they want, it literally means whatever they want. At least we have that safeguard, you know, against any incident that may happen in the future.
Well, I don't know. The Third Amendment doesn't also include squatters. That seems to be an issue these days. It's like, oh, I left on vacation, came back, somebody's in my house, and I can't legally kick them out. Just saying.
You know, and it's also like, what do they call that? Like when you're breaking into private property. You know, how if you're a soldier coming into my house looking to stay in my home, how is that different from anybody trying to break into my house to steal things? You know, so it should probably be as punishable by law in the same way that it would be, you know, someone looking to steal stuff from my house.
Punishable by massive throat punch and possible taco kick. Just saying.
I guess it could probably be applied nowadays as a matter of like a right to privacy. Should these people be allowed to come into my house and do whatever they want just because they're soldiers? No. In the same way that a criminal shouldn't be coming into my house to hide because he's running away from law enforcement, or because I happen to be out of the house and they decide to come in and break in and take my property or stay in my property without my consent.
Well, there was one case that was close to qualifying. It was one time the National Guard had to go into a prison, and I guess they kicked out the prison guards from their barracks to house the National Guard soldiers. But then that was publicly owned. It wasn't a private citizen's house. So they didn't end up ruling with the Third Amendment because they said it didn't fall under that category. So,
and I wonder if, well, probably not, but I was thinking of like when the Boston bombing happened, and law enforcement and other organizations like that were going, through homes and whatnot, trying to search for these people, for the Tsarnaev brothers when they were on the run. But I guess that wouldn't necessarily qualify as something under the Third Amendment, would it?
No, it's specifically because they did try to use it for police officers one other time as well. And it only is for soldiers because they are, federally executive branch level, not private citizens, I guess. Like they belong to.
Like they're like federal employees, basically.
Like I told you guys, if my husband gets a sunburn, he can get in trouble for damaging government property. Like that's how ridiculous it is.
Well, let's just make sure that your husband never gets a sunburn. That's all I gotta say.
He tans, unlike me.
Oh, man.
Anyway, all right. I think that's what we have for today for the Constitutorial. But don't worry, our favorite segment, Ring the Bell, is coming right up here. The Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. Welcome back to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network, and it is time to ring the bell. So first off, I want to start off by reading the poll results from last week. Sammy's story about Oregon allowing abortions to all people of Oregon because they're just that giving. And the question was, should Oregon be made to secede from the union for being utterly worthless? 38% of you said obviously, 6% said no, it's okay, and 56% said, do we get a new state? The next poll, should losers who steal from kids and making them miss the first day of school be hung by their toes? 13% of you said yes, 50% of you said obviously, and 37% of you said clearly. I'm glad we can all agree on that. And the final poll question was, would a Confederate general who's been dead for 140 years be buried near you? Would that be a problem for you? 0% of you said The Walking Dead is real. I'm very disappointed in those people who didn't vote. The second one was no, leave him be. 91% of you said that he should stay where he is, and 9% of you were indifferent about where the gentleman would be buried. So now on to our stories. Sammy, what's going on in China?
Okay, so this, according to the South China Morning Post, a woman leaving a residential estate, which the picture makes it look like it's a condo, she was stopped and was about to be given a parking ticket. And to avoid being given the ticket, she just abandoned her car and left it there, which blocked other people from being able to go in or out of the complex. So the company called a crane to come move the car. But instead of just picking it up, letting the cars go through and moving it to another place on the ground, they put it on the roof of a building and left it there.
Well, that's fantastic.
Okay, then. Because that's the first thing I think of to do when a car is blocking traffic. Just put it on the roof. No big deal.
Just put it on a roof. It's like it would have made sense if they would have put it on the roof of the house of the, where this woman lives or in front of her house. But they put it in a random roof. Hey, it's China. It's super overpopulated. Let's just put this car over here. No one will miss it. It'll just be over here. I'd really like to see how they're going to, whether they would be willing to bring that car back down once the lady comes back looking for her car.
Why would they not just impound it? Like, do they not do that in China? Is that not a thing? Like, because if that happens here, your car gets towed if you leave it.
Right. I mean, I don't know if like a crane was just more accessible at that moment or what, but they said that the driver and the firm's representative eventually had to go to the nearby police station to settle their dispute. Nobody said if the woman ever paid her ticket or who paid for the crane fees. But, I mean, I guess that's one way to do it. To avoid getting a ticket, just leave your car.
Oh, jeez. Well, that's the way that it works. But anyway, so speaking of ladies, I'm always torn between who's the worst person alive between these two ladies, and that's Lena Dunham or Amy Schumer. I swear they try and compete over who can be the biggest hoe bag of the week. This week, it's definitely Amy's turn because she just decided that it's just not going to be easy for me to like her at all. I think she's incredibly unfunny, and apparently Netflix may think the same about her. You see, Miss Schumer had been complaining that comedians Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock were making more money than her and that this is income inequality, and she was having none of it. So before you go yelling at us because we are saying that Amy is horrible, let me explain what happened. So Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, and Amy Schumer had signed up for specials to be released exclusively through Netflix. Somehow, Amy got wind that her special was purchased at a lower price than Chappelle and Rock's, but she failed to mention that the two comedians signed up for multiple specials while she only had the one, the leather special, which changed Netflix's rating system because it was so horrible. People were giving it, 1 star? And now Netflix does thumbs up and thumbs down because people can't have their feelings hurt.
Let's be clear, the 1 star is because they make you leave at least a star. You cannot give it 0 stars.
Oh, yes. Now I remember. And a lot of people were like, I wouldn't even give this one, a 0 star because it doesn't let me. So it gets a 1 star. All right. So, but two things that bear mentioning. First, we all know that Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle are far funnier and much more experienced in their craft than Amy Schumer, so it only makes sense to pay them at a higher rate. Secondly, and more importantly, whose fault is it that they did not ask for more money for their crappy comedy? Maybe Miss Schumer needs to get herself a better agent, or at least have the character of her convictions and demand more money from the get-go rather than after the fact. I really don't know what she's seeking to gain, whether to shame Netflix into giving her more money. I honestly don't know. But, Amy, why don't you do like real people do? Learn from your mistake, and next time you enter a negotiation, start high. And then when the numbers start dropping, you settle into an amount that's to your satisfaction. And honestly, I was reading this story and it really popped out at me. It's like, why is Amy Schumer exercising her white privilege on Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle? Right?
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, who feels a bigger disparate impact? Black men or white women? Have at it, social justice warriors.
So it's one of those things like grab the popcorn, ladies, because the white privilege versus versus everybody else, it's gonna be quite the free for all. So I'm dying to see what comes out of that.
They're crossing the streams, so most likely things are going to implode, or black holes will form and the whole world will just be sucked into oblivion because they can't decide which one has less privilege. It will be glorious.
Indeed.
Okay, well, speaking of social justice, or the lack thereof, or the overwhelming apparent need for it, I was going to talk about the decline in history. Obviously, people don't know what history is, much less take the time to learn about it, so our museums are feeling it in their pockets and in their necessity. However, a story was just released on Daily Wire about Batman, so I said, screw history, we're talking Batman.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Case in point.
Right? So no wonder history's dying, possibly because Batman. Priorities, people. So the story came out on the Daily Wire today talking about Batman and some changes that will be coming to the character soon with its latest writer, Sean Gordon Murphy. As you all might have remembered, a few months back, it was revealed that Captain America was not actually the patriotic hunk that we all thought he was. In fact, he was double agent working for Hydra this whole time, turning the story on its head and making us all feel like fools for following him for as long as we did. But apparently that's a theme that's following us into our comic book world, because now the plague has spread to DC Comics, because you see, Sean Gordon Murphy has decided that, as is usual, the bad guy is now the good guy. The Joker, the clown prince of crime, is now going to be going after Bruce Wayne, the Dark Knight, in a social justice warrior style. In fact, he's not going to be the clown prince of crime. He's going to be Jack Napier. I don't know where that came from. Is a left-wing politician who's bent on taking down the fascist oppressor Batman, who has changed Gotham into the world where Black Lives Matter and Antifa all live, and we have to bring down the fascists that is the Dark Knight. I understand needing to keep the comic book industry alive, because let's face it, people are more interested in the movies. I am one of those people that I understand the basics of the stories of where they came from, but I am more definitely going to be going to the movies rather than sitting down and reading a comic. I understand trying to spice up a story a little bit to try to get people interested and trying to invert things. I get that there are alternate universes. You know, we all watch Star Trek, right? We've all seen the mirror universe. We've all seen, Superman at his worst when he's touched the red kryptonite and suddenly he's not Superman anymore. It's Bizarro World. I get that. What I don't get is why we insist these days on taking superheroes. The intent of these people is to see that there is a better way to do things, to see that there's someone out there fighting the good fight. And yet, every single time, now we have to change their story to turn them into this horrible person that, why were we following them in the first place? Why did we think they were cool? Was it just because the Batmobile was awesome? Or was it because the character was awesome?
Yeah, both.
Exactly. I'm a huge fan of Superman. I'm not really loyal to DC or Marvel. I like both, but my dad kind of had me growing up with DC because he's a huge Batman fan. I love Superman, but I think I have a special place in my heart for Batman because he doesn't have your typical superpowers. Yeah, he's rich. Yeah. He can pay for the Batmobiles and all the fancy toys and stuff. But the dude has to work out twice as hard as everybody else, unlike Superman, who just shows up and is strong because he happens to be in the sunlight. Whereas Batman actually has to use his wits and his own strength to win against Gotham's criminals. And it just infuriates me to see some douchey little writer come in and change that to make him a fascist because he stands for something.
This has been going on for such a long time. Full disclosure, my husband is a huge comic book fan, connoisseur. I'm actually staring at a rather large Batman action figure, of which Jaina has seen a picture of.
I have seen it. I do have pictures, can confirm.
Yes, there is proof. There is proof. This social justice themes infused in comic books have been going on for a long time. There's actually a special that airs occasionally on History Channel, and I think it's called Comic Books Revealed, something like that, in which they go deeper into the history of DC and Marvel, where the characters came from. And there was one the part where we actually started watching the special, my husband and I, they were talking about Wonder Woman, and they were talking about how Wonder Woman in the 70s went from being your typical Princess Diana. She's a fighter. She's got all of these powers. They took away all of her powers, and they had her, learn karate and become a self-sufficient woman in the sense that she was independent and she didn't need any man to help her, and she didn't need any special superpowers. And feminists actually came out and said, why are you changing Wonder Woman? I believe it was Gloria Steinem who was one of the first people to come out and say, why are you changing Wonder Woman? The reason why we grew up and enjoyed reading Wonder Woman was because she had these powers, and she's a kick-ass character. You're taking away the things that make her a kick-ass character. So they reverted the character back to its original form of having powers and so on and so forth. But this has been going on for such a long time. People use comic books as a way to escape from reality in the same way that people use regular books or use writing or use any other kind of hobby to get away from reality. But sometimes when you infuse these stories with the social justice storylines, you start to push those people who are really not interested in SJW history. You're just pushing those people away by changing what each character stands for.
You know, it's like we've talked about this before. They did it with Beauty and the Beast. They did it with they've done it with obviously with Captain America, which is heartbreaking for me because I adore Captain America and I can't believe he'd be Hydra. So that's crap. But, you know, it's just one more thing. There is literally nothing you can love anymore because someone is going to try to crush you for loving it by injecting their politics into it. I don't understand why entertainment cannot just be entertainment. I don't know why it has to have a story that teaches a lesson about how horrible you are for being white, or why, you know, standing up for something or potentially not agreeing with a particular movement means you're racist or a fascist. And despite being this, you know, moody yet awesome character, you're making some sort of statement by taking a beloved character and turning it into something that it's not. And then it also goes hand in hand with why the villains always have to have a backstory now, and it always has to be like super sad. Like, you can understand why they'd be so horrible. Like, you have to feel sorry for them. It's just obnoxious. The whole point of the Joker, and this is kind of an aside, is that he doesn't have a backstory. He's just a terrible person. It's not because he was abused or he had a horrible life. He doesn't have a backstory. He's just a bad guy. And that's why the Batman fights him, is because he's a bad guy. So giving him a story like this just negates everything that we've ever heard about Batman. Even if it is a fictional story, I take this very, very seriously, obviously. So that's all we have for tonight. Sorry, guys. I got my nerd on for a second.
It's okay.
Yeah, it better be, because it's going to keep happening. Thank you for being a fantastic audience. If you want to do it again sometime, we're always, as long as Sammy's internet keeps working, always on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, and iHeartRadio, which, oddly enough, if you're missing us during this week, is what you can find all of our previous shows on, too. Shh, don't cry. You get to hear us again whenever you want. It's okay. So when the show drops, if you're available, join us on Twitter at Bells of Liberty for a podcast party, where you get to continue the discussion with us and invite everyone to participate in our weekly hashtag Ring the Bell polls. If you prefer Facebook, we've got some stuff going on there too at The Bells of Liberty. All our show links are available there. News stories and commentary for our midweek chimes is available. If you haven't seen them yet, we are now posting videos on Wednesdays about topics we want to discuss before we get to the podcast. This past Wednesday, Sammy threw some shade on our fave, Hillary. Why didn't you vote for me, Clinton? And showed us some pretty awesome Asian dollar store lashes, if I do say so myself. So, plenty of places.
They were on point.
They were on point, girl. I was like, damn, I need to get some Asian dollar store lashes, because I don't think I've ever had lashes that long.
They come with their own glue. So
fabulous.
That's important.
I will have to keep that in mind.
We need a tutorial on how to apply Asian dollars for fake lashes.
The eyelash tutorial. That will be our next episode. Sammy will assist. So anyway, go ahead, find us on Facebook if you would like. You do have plenty of places to hear, see, and talk to us. Go ahead and find us there, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.
Peace out, Cub Scouts.
Thanks for listening to the Bells of Liberty podcast. Want to listen to more sassy content? All shows are available free on demand on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play Music. Have something to say? You can find us on Twitter at Bells of Liberty, and also on Facebook, www.facebook.com/The Bells of Liberty. And as always, keep calm and ring on.